Hi guys. I wonder how many of you have seen the film 2012. I remember watching it when I was in a geography lesson, I think in year 9. It's a great film. The premise of the film is that the scientists have discovered that the Earth is warming really quickly, kind of faster than global warming, and it's about to end in disaster for everyone. The scientists have predicted some major flooding and other disasters like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. So the world's going to end with an environmental disaster. Or at least that's what the film predicts. Now, that might sound a little far-fetched to us. The world ending with just a couple years warning and being destroyed by natural disasters. I mean, it sounds pretty dramatic and improbable, doesn't it? In 2012, we see one possible prediction for how the world's going to end. But then loads of people have their own theories, don't they? We live in a world where people love to make predictions on how the world's going to end. In fact, I spent a very enjoyable kind of 20 minutes on Wikipedia looking at all the different theories that people have made through history on the how and when the world is going to end. My personal favourite is by a guy called Wovoka, who, and I quote, founded the ghost dance movement. He said that the world would end in the year 1890, which is 130 years ago. So I think it's fair to say that he got that one a bit wrong. But the point is that there have been loads and loads of predictions, but none of them have got it right yet, have they? All of them have ended up looking rather silly once the world has continued to exist. And the world does continue to exist. This means that if we want to know the how and the when of how the world's going to end and when it's going to end, well, we need to find a trusted source. Not just some conspiracy theory or some bloke's prediction. It won't surprise you guys to know that we believe the Bible to be the trusted source on everything, actually. But it might surprise you a little bit to know that Jesus talked loads about the end of the world. In fact, Matthew, Mark, and Luke all have entire chapters all about the apocalypse, all about the world ending. And so if Jesus thinks it's important for us to know about the end of the world, then we really ought to listen. If we've been here for the last few weeks, you'll know that we've been talking loads about the day Jesus coming back and how that's the day we're looking forward to, and we're all about that day. But as we wait for that day, Jesus tells us that before we get there, a number of things are going to happen first. They're what's called signs of the times, kind of ways we know that the world is about to be changed completely as Jesus comes back. So we're going to look at these 4 things that will happen before Jesus comes back. Luke chapter 1 is where we're going to be, but there are other passages as well, and I'll probably talk a bit about them. But have Luke 21 open in front of you if you've got a Bible, that'd be great. So the first sign that Jesus talks about is that Christians will be persecuted. Christians will be persecuted. He says this in verse 12 of chapter 21, so read along with me. He says, before all this, they will seize you and they'll persecute you. They will hand you over to synagogues and put you in prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors, and all on account of my name. In other words, things are going to be really difficult for you if you're a Christian. You're going to be hauled before courts and put in prison. But then, really, this isn't that unexpected, is it? I mean, Jesus has already made it very clear to his disciples that they're going to suffer for being his followers. And it's true for us. We're going to suffer up until the day Jesus comes back. And we should bear in mind that our brothers and sisters in other countries in the world, places like North Korea, well, they're being put to death and tortured because they follow Jesus. They're experiencing persecution way more than we are. So actually, this sign is already with us, isn't it? We presently do suffer for being followers of Jesus, and other Christians suffer much more. And as we look forward to Jesus coming back, well, that's only going to get worse. So that's the first thing, persecution. The second thing is there'll be more and more disasters, natural disasters. This is what Jesus says in verse 11. There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven. Aha, that's more like it, you're thinking. That's a bit more apocalypse now, isn't it? That's a bit more exciting. Well, it's true that as we look forward to Jesus coming back, we should expect to see more and more natural disasters. But then we see natural disasters all the time at the moment, don't we? I mean, we're currently in the middle of an incredibly disrupting event. And when was the last time you turned on your news and saw the headline, "No one dies today due to a natural disaster"? I mean, that never happens, does it? We're surrounded by evidence that the world is an incredibly broken place. So that's natural disasters. The third thing that Jesus talks about is false predictions about the return of Jesus. False teaching. So this is verse 8. He says, "Watch out that you are not deceived, for many will come in my name, claiming I am he, and the time is near. Do not follow them." So he says there's always going to be people who say that the end is nigh and hold up billboards and get all excited about 2012 and stuff. But Jesus says, don't worry about this, because it's going to happen all the time before I return. Well, we should find that very reassuring, shouldn't we? People love to predict the end date of history. We see that all the time. And we don't need to worry about these claims because God is in control, not the people who make these predictions. And the fourth and final sign that we'll look at before Jesus comes back is that there will be an overall increase in wickedness. He says in verse 10, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be wars, and many people will die." The rest of the Bible helps us to understand that the projection of human history will not be altogether positive. Actually, we're not going to work out how to solve all our problems peacefully. We're not going to solve world hunger. We're not going to cure all the diseases. Now, scientific progress may bring many good things, and I'm all for that. Let's go and find a vaccine for coronavirus, absolutely. But actually, the fundamental problem here is what's inside us. The natural greed and selfishness of people, that's not going away anytime soon. And in fact, as the world is brought to a close, the Bible says that evil will increase. The New Testament talks specifically about the ultimate personification of evil. The kind of most evil man. He's called the man of lawlessness, or he's sometimes called the Antichrist. And in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, which is another letter by Paul, Paul says, "For that day," the day when Jesus comes back, "will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. So what we've seen from these signs is that while there may be some events that haven't happened yet, most of the signs of the last days are things we currently experience. I mean, even with this whole thing of the Antichrist, there's still evil men. There are still people like a Hitler, who kind of are almost like mini Antichrists, people who are incredibly evil and set themselves up to be somehow godlike. Actually, we experience all of these things to some extent in different ways. Maybe your friends are very opposed to you telling them the good news of Jesus. Well, we should expect that. Persecution's going to happen more and more until Jesus comes back. And we currently experience natural disasters. I mean, at the moment there's a flood happening in the Congo, there's a cyclone in Bangladesh, and the Amazon rainforest continues to be burnt down. Oh, and there's not to mention the human disasters. I mean, there's a civil war in Yemen, there's mass rioting in Hong Kong, and there's an economic collapse happening in Venezuela at the moment. And those things don't even make it onto the news. Not only that, but we currently experience all sorts of false predictions about when the world will end. And we currently experience human wickedness. In fact, human wickedness does way more damage to our lives than any flood or wildfire, I would suggest. So all these things happening in some form should tell us that Jesus could come back at any minute. When you see these things on the news or hear about them from your friends, or when you experience them yourself, well, that's when you need to remember that God is in control of human history, and he will bring it to an end at some point. Maybe not yet. Maybe we'll have to keep waiting. Maybe it won't happen in our lifetime. I don't know. I love verse 28 of our chapter in Luke. It's the response that we should all have to these things. Instead of panicking when things like natural disasters and human evil, let's listen to what Jesus says we should do. This is verse 28 of Luke 21. Jesus says, when these things begin to take place, when the world seems to be getting worse and worse and worse, what should we do? Stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. He says, I'm coming back and I'll put an end to these things. It's getting near. We don't know when Jesus will come back. We can't possibly put a date on it, but we should be expecting him soon. And so the question I want to ask you guys, and the question we've really been looking at for the last few weeks, is this: are you ready? Are you ready for Jesus to come back soon?